Hello, this is a Brave Knight Mercenary spotlight on Mamonir. Mamonir is a legendary defender and is one of the dominant Octos. She was a gifted tactician and commanded her fleets over the Dead Seas. Mamonir met her companion Levidel when Levidel desperately sought for help to quell a monster invasion in the deep sea, where Mamonir was stationed at. Levidel is the daughter of the Kraken and has an alliance with the Octos, but the Octos refused to help her. Fortunately, Mamonir agreed to help Levidel fight the monster invasion. Mamonir's genius tactics allowed him to win the battle and bring peace to the Dead Sea, but unfortunately Mamonir herself became dead. She was actually suffering from a terminal illness and agreed to help Levidel because she wanted to fight a good fight that would brand her name in the history books. Levidel and her Kraken mother agreed to a ritual to bring back Mamonir to life by having Levidel bind part of her soul with Mamonir. Now, they are BFFs. Very cute. I'll go over Mamonir's skills, gameplay style, and provide some of my opinions on her. I won't be going over the details of her skills, but just the general parts of it. I'll link the Brave Knight Encyclopedia in the video description where you can easily read on her stats and skill values. Mamonir's first skill is Octopus. Yeah, this skill is just called Octopus. Mamonir attacks 4 times and she deals max HP additional damage for each hit. This additional damage ignores barriers, so any incoming damage reduction that is provided by a barrier type skill will be ignored. At plus 12, this skill gains a sub-skill called Knight of Death. In the case that Mamonir ends up receiving fatal damage, her HP is instead set to 1. She then receives a one-hit death guard that lasts for 10 turns. This skill can be seen as a last stand situation, or as a second chance in staying alive if she receives direct damage. I'll go more into details regarding this later. Mamonir's second skill is Nullifier Counter. Mamonir removes all removable buffs on her attacker after she is normal attacked. At plus 3, Mamonir also applies buff prohibition onto her attacker after she is normal attacked. Mamonir's third skill is Energy Guard. This is a guard skill that grants Mamonir a guard with an HP value. The max HP of the guard scales with Mamonir's max HP value at start of battle. If you adjust Mamonir's max HP during battle, it will only reflect her actual health and not the health of the Energy Guard. Every turn, Mamonir will regenerate part of her energy shield based on her max HP. Energy Guard will remain active until it runs out of its duration or if it's depleted of its life. At plus 10, Mamonir gains an additional Energy Guard after her first one breaks. The second Energy Guard has 10 times the value of Mamonir's max HP, but it does not regenerate and it only lasts for 10 turns. Once this Energy Guard is gone, Mamonir is down to her actual HP to stay alive. Mamonir's Awakening skill is Debuff Immunity. Mamonir is immune to all debuffs. At plus 12 and above, Mamonir gains incoming damage reduction. Before I jump onto the gameplay overview, I want to explain some of her energy shield interactions and mechanics, given that I just briefly went over the skills. Mamonir has essentially 2 life values, her actual health and her energy guard. Her effective health is 2 of these combined, but plus 10 Mamonirs will have this health value fluctuate because if her first energy guard is depleted, she will get a new energy guard. Remember that the second energy guard is massive, but it only lasts for 10 turns. Most traditional units will just have to fight through her energy guard and whack at it until it's finally gone, but there are some exceptions. The reason why I bring up the notion of 2 main life values is because of the existence of direct damage. Units like Levia, Alec, and Valze deal direct damage that ignores guards, and Mamonir's energy guard is a guard. This means that they have means of ignoring the energy guard and eat away at her actual health. In this example, I have a Valze attacking this Mamonir constantly. The arena is littered with graves at this point, so Valze is definitely doing some form of direct damage. Initially, it looks like she's just hitting Mamonir and barely denting her energy guard, so Mamonir should be able to tank this for quite a while. But what's happening behind the curtains is that Mamonir's actual health is dropping, until she finally just ends up dying despite having a nearly full energy guard. Plus 12 Mamonir has a mitigation for this, and it's her immortality mechanic provided by her Knight of Death sub-skill, which allows her to survive a lethal hit. If Levia directly targets Mamonir, Mamonir can actually survive, but because she only has 1 HP of her actual health now, any other direct damage source will ignore her death guard and knock that final health to 0. You can monitor Mamonir's actual life by just clicking on her. Her energy shield is displayed on the battlefield, but her actual health stat is reflected in the information bar above. Just some good things to know. Now onto the gameplay overview. Mamonir is a roadblock tank with many defensive mechanics layered on top of each other. To say that Mamonir is resilient would be an understatement. Mamonir also sports some incredibly powerful utility skills as well. Multi-hit provided by her Octopus skill is a fantastic tool to shred through Death Guards and Flame Guards, and her impressive tile range that she gets at plus 15 means that she can cover a huge range in front of her with her multi-hit skill. Her HP scaling damage is fairly nice too, but she only ignores barriers, meaning that damage reduction provided by permanent skills and defense will reduce the damage that she deals. The most valuable of Mamonir's utility is her Nullifier Reflect that is currently only shared with Valtor. Mamonir takes it one step further however and also applies buff Prohibition on Reflect. This is insanely strong as the Prohibition can last as long as 18 turns. Given Mamonir's tenacity, many units will find themselves running into Mamonir's nullification counter and having their buffs removed while also potentially missing out on buffs in later rounds. I'll go over what Mamonir counters. Mamonir's Nullifier Reflect and Prohibition is a huge problem for supports like Raphitia, Galania, and Belieth, who all have powerful buffs that are removable. Supports in general have it rough because they may be unable to reapply their buff onto later rounds due to the duration of Mamonir's buff Prohibition. Taunters who attack Mamonir will be unable to gain taunt due to her Prohibition and will have any of their current taunts removed. This makes Mamonir a good deterrent to block taunt tanks with. She can limit the effectiveness of Kali, Benshina, Bane, Kaelin, Glacia, and Astrid. Mamonir's Nullifier and buff Prohibition on Reflect isn't just good for taunters. Many other units are liable to have some issues. Valtor does not just get his HP boost because of buff Prohibition. Jhin can no longer heal. Yuri loses her stat boost. You kinda get the idea. Mamonir is also great at staving off percentage HP attacks since her energy shield extends far beyond her max health value. She does well in defending against Lucius, Asmode, Angelica, and other Mamonirs. She may eventually find her energy shield blown up after sustaining back-to-back hits, but she is definitely good at holding off those kind of units. Mamonir's multi-hit is fantastic for dealing with Lucius, Susera, Frisia, and Yuri. One thing to take note of with Mamonir in regards to Lucius is that she doesn't do a lot of damage generally per hit. If Lucius has his healing activated to where he heals in between every hit, he may not actually die and pop his Death Guard stacks. Unless Mamonir is considerably buffed, you may want another unit to pop him first and then let Mamo shred the Death Guard afterwards. Because Mamonir hits 4 times and has an additional damage component for each hit, she can deal considerable damage to Seto. Jhin also needs to be wary of her multi-hit as well, given that he does not reflect normal attacks. Because Mamonir has an immortality component in her first skill that is layered behind her energy guard, Mamonir can actually take a lethal dose of direct damage, which is far more than what most units can take. Mamonir could survive hits from Alec and Valze for a bit under some conditions, and Mamonir can take one hit of Levia's direct hit. Do note that if you intend for Mamonir to tank direct damage, you want her to be at least at plus 12. I'll go over some Mamonir counters now. I mentioned that Mamonir can survive direct damage, but it's one of the better options against her since it avoids having to deal with her massive energy guards. Levia's direct damage will one-shot Mamonirs that are not at plus 12 or above, and for those that are, Levia will bring Mamonir to 1 HP, which can set up Valze or Alec to score the final blow. Speaking of Alec and Valze, they are capable of chipping away at Mamonir's actual life with their direct damage as well. Alec can deal a lot of damage, but he will generally not be able to one-shot her because of Knight of Death's clutch factor. Valze can blow through Knight of Death because Valze deals multiple instances of separate direct damage sources for every grave on the field. Valze can trigger Mamonir's Knight of Death and kill her through it all in one blow. It's hard to one-shot Mamonir with direct damage, but the combined effort and usage of it can take down Mamonir fairly easily. Utilizing non-direct damage tends to be a battle of attrition against Mamonir. You can wail at her with heavy attacks like Yuri, Eden, Nartis, and Gunther, but it's not very effective, and having your units applying buff Prohibition onto themselves all while focusing a unit that's actually supposed to be a tank is kind of inefficient. Also because Mamonir has a Reflect, you can utilize Barbara to deal decent damage to Mamonir and potentially pop her first energy guard. Make sure that Barbara's crit damage is buffed considerably when doing this and that she's buffed by unremovable buffs. Speaking of buffs, it's best to utilize unremovable buffs when attacking Mamonir. Many 5-star supports with companion updates provide this: Stella, Michaela, Sola, Asmode, and Veronia. A nice option to consider is to use Kaelin to have Mamonir shred her own energy guard. Kaelin's Reflect is fairly powerful, and Mamonir can hit Kaelin up to 4 times, which will deal massive damage to Mamonir's own energy guard, especially if Kaelin's counter crits along the way. In similar spirits, you could try janky things like Galania buffed Larkus, as Larkus boasts one of the game's most powerful counters. He will need Galania buff to stay alive however. This is kind of a meme strategy though. It's generally best to approach Mamonir with a strategy in mind. This mostly applies to Guild War, but if you can, you want to prioritize the other units instead of Mamonir, because throwing all of your units to beat a tank is only a good idea if the tank is the most dangerous unit remaining. Make smart forms that keep your damage dealers safe, so that in the late game situation where you need to finish off Mamonir, they can easily do so. Mamonir's energy shield could be outright ridiculous, and I've seen her starting energy guard go over 100,000 a few times, so trying to focus her down early is just not a great idea. Ignore her and save her for later if possible. You can easily stall her with most tank units. So some synergies with Mamonir. Mamonir is pretty versatile and fits with any team comp. You can also utilize her with Albion to give her taunt and have her tank enemies one by one, but do know that Albion's taunt is removable, so once something like Valze hits Mamonir, then yeah, the taunt is gone. Interestingly enough, Floria and other healers can actually help Mamonir with their direct damage weakness. Mamonir's base health is fortunately incredibly high, to the point where Alec and Valze have difficulties blowing her up immediately right off the bat. You can heal her actual HP so that she's harder to take down by the combined efforts of Levia, Alec, and Valze. She shares a set bonus with Belfern and Valze that grants attack. This is insanely beneficial for Belfern and Valze, but it's only decent on Mamonir. Okay, so for my opinion, very few characters provide the sheer amounts of utility and defensive tenacity that Mamonir currently provides. Characters like Lucius and Arcant are very durable units, but they generally don't do a whole lot. Units like Valtor and Bane have a lot of utility, but they also have their own faults. Mamonir is pretty much a monstrous combination of utility and defensive qualities, and that easily makes her one of the strongest of the 4 Octos. While it is debatable who's truly the strongest, because it seems right now that everyone's mostly having different opinions, Mamonir is definitely the most overall useful in general of the 4 updated Octos. She works in nearly every composition, and she always performs well. Nullifier Reflect that applies buff prohibition is one of the best reflex skills in the game, and Mamonir is a perfect character to have it. She's very good. Mamonir sees applications in all PvE and PvP content. She's very strong in Guild War defenses because she is so tanky. I can anticipate a lot of Guild War attacks running past the 50 turn count mark. It's going to be pretty chaotic, honestly. So should you build Mamonir? Yeah, absolutely. Just a heads up, I'm going to tell you to invest in all 4 of the new Octos because they're all really good and balanced this time around. But if you were to ask me who you should really invest in, I think Mamonir is a bit above the rest in terms of priority just because of how overall useful she is. Other characters are slightly more specialized, but I can see Mamonir being just consistently useful in everything. If you haven't chosen your Jumpstart Octo 2 yet and you're really undecided between Belfern and Mamonir, know that Mamonir is the safe pick. Belfern is great, but Mamonir is really great. Greater? I don't know. It mostly depends on your preference, but just know that if you spun a wheel between the 4 updated Octos and whatever it picked was the one that you're going to invest in, then you're still going to be right. When investing in Mamonir, know that she's a pretty steady build overall. +3 is the first really important milestone for her, and I'd argue that she needs to be +3 minimum to be PvP ready. This is where she could be useful in Guild War at the very least. If you're looking to budget, you can keep Mamonir here, but honestly you should just scale her up as far as you can or work on her. +10 and +12 are important milestones for her to be more sticky. +12 is crucial if you intend to use her to block Levia and Alec with. Anything beyond that is great and it's good to work for, but Mamonir is functionally complete at +12. +13 and 14 gives her more energy guard scaling, which is absolutely fantastic, and +15 gives her a +tile range, which is also very good. Overall, Mamonir is considered to be the winner among the 4 updated Octos, and while I have my preference towards the other 3, it's a really close contest and I could definitely see eye to eye with those who say that Mamonir is the clear-cut best. She is in fact the most versatile and useful character among the 4 in my opinion, and is a valuable asset to your team if you choose to obtain her. Thanks for watching my Mamonir Mercenary Spotlight. I managed to get through this one without making a single stupid tentacle ex-anime girl loot joke, so props to me for professionalism. Now excuse me, I've got some Japanese cartoon shows to watch.